a nice warm bed. You just remember what your old pal said, son, you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me.
The bell and the mourning doves call us together in covenant to bring us to mindfulness and bring fairness and loving kindness as unforced flowers of life. Today, let us especially remember our covenant to affirm and promote the second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in all our relations. Good morning. Welcome to virtual worship with Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation in formerly Lenape territory, White Plains, New York. I'm the Reverend Meredith Garmon, minister here, coming to you from our sanctuary.
Good morning. I'm Tracy Brenneman, Community UU religious educator, coming to you from my home in Westchester County.
Good morning. I'm Adam Kent, CUUC music director, here at my piano in Manhattan.
Welcome to this home of liberal religion, which affirms 5 commitments: learning, freedom, justice, institution building, and hope.
Learning. Revelation is continuous. Meaning has not been finally captured. Nothing is complete, and thus nothing is exempt from criticism.
Freedom. All relations must rest on free consent. Because coercions may be subtle, this work of detecting and removing them is ongoing.
Justice. We are morally obligated to direct our effort toward the establishment of a just and loving community. Hence, the voices of prophets are central and indispensable.
Institution building. We cannot become whole nor advance learning, freedom, and justice without good institutions.
Hope. Things could get better. There's no guarantee that they will, but through our efforts, they really might.
So thank you for being here. It is good to be together. Our shared light is a beacon of hope.
It is April 4th today, the anniversary of the assassination of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. His eloquent voice of reason and passion for justice was taken from us 53 years ago today. It is the Sunday at the end of the second full week of spring. Daylight today at White Plains latitude will last 12 hours, 53 minutes, and the waning moon is at 3/4. Today is the first Sunday after the first full moon after the vernal equinox, which means
on the Christian calendar, today is Easter. Specifically on the Catholic and Protestant calendars, today is Easter. The Eastern Orthodox Easter is on May 2nd this year. Why is it different, Meredith?
Short answer, the Orthodox Church uses the Julian calendar.
So to those of you who celebrate Easter and are on the Gregorian calendar, happy Easter.
On the Jewish calendar, the 8-day festival of Passover ends at sundown tonight. To those of you who celebrate Passover, get ready to expectorate some phlegm with me. Chag Pesach Sameach.
And a special welcome to our visitors. If you're visiting us for the first time today, we invite you to introduce yourself in the chat. You'll find a link to our order of service on our webpage at cuucwp.org. There you will also find resources to help keep us connected during this time and a donate button. For April, our Share the Plate funds go to the Westchester Community College Foundation Student Emergency Fund. We're able to take contributions via the donate button for your pledge, the plate share, and the minister's discretionary fund.
Now, Board Chair Joe Majak has some news and will then lead us in lighting our chalices.
Hi, I'm Joe Majak. As the chair of this congregation, I welcome you. Did you know that the Caring and Sharing Committee has quietly conducted a very compassionate COVID-19 campaign? At the outset of the pandemic, Caring and Sharing reached out to every senior and homebound CUUC member to offer assistance and ensure that they felt safe. The campaign shifted gears about a month ago when Caring and Sharing reached out again to make sure everybody who wanted a vaccine could get one. They provided vaccine site information and in some cases arranged transportation to meet those in need. The Caring and Sharing Committee is led by Astrid Rogers, and Robin Roque ended up helping 6 or 7 individuals get their vaccinations, as well as other members of the congregation in need. Thanks, Caring and Sharing, and thanks, Robin. And now it's time to light the chalice. On this Sunday, at the end of the second full week of the season, we dedicate our chalice to the second principle of our faith: justice, equity, and compassion in all our relations, just like caring and sharing. Please join with me in the chalice lighting words from Christine Robinson. Whoa. We gather this hour as people of faith, with joys and sorrows, gifts and needs. We light this beacon of hope, sign of our quest for trust and meaning, in celebration of the life we share together.
Our story now makes its way to England, which has its own very distinctive church history. Anti-Trinitarian thought had popped up in the British Isles at least as early as 1327, when Adam Duff O'Toole was executed outside Dublin for denying the Trinity. Later that century, John Wycliffe had headed a reform movement of sorts, questioning the privileged status of the clergy, the luxury and pomp of local parishes and their ceremonies, the veneration of saints, the sacraments, requiem masses, transubstantiation, monasticism, and the legitimacy of the papacy. Wycliffe, together with supporting associates, produced the first translation of the Bible into the English vernacular of the time, what we call Middle English. The project was completed the year Wycliffe died, 1384. The printing press hadn't been invented yet, so the Wycliffe Bible didn't have the impact it otherwise might have. Still, the Reformation did not come to England in the form that it swept over the mainland. England did a sort of Reformation light by creating the Church of England, which to this day, as the Anglicans or the Episcopalian Church, has a liturgy and a worship style that's halfway between Catholic and Protestant. While Luther's Reformation was based on 95 theses of critique against the abuses and corruptions of the Catholic Church, England's Henry VIII simply wanted to be rid of a wife who, through no fault of her own, had not borne him a surviving son, and who also wasn't as young as Anne Boleyn. Since the Pope wouldn't grant Henry an annulment, Henry prevailed upon the English Church to renounce papal authority. The year was 1534.
Johann Sebastian Bach reminds us that Easter is a holiday associated with the rejuvenation of nature. This is an arrangement for piano of his aria, "Sheep May Safely Graze."
Our opening poem is the one that will be familiar to some of you from E. Cummings. I thank you, God, for most this amazing day, for the leaping greenly spirits of trees and a blue true dream of sky, and for everything which is natural, which is infinite, which is yes. I who have died am alive again today, and this is the sun's birthday. This is the birthday of life and of love and wings and of the gay, great, happening, illimitably earth. How should tasting, touching, hearing, seeing, breathing, any lifted from the no of all nothing, human, merely being, doubt, unimaginable you. Now the ears of my ears awake, and now the eyes of my eyes are opened. On YouTube. Now, the spoken invocation, and then sing along with the sung invocation. Words of invocation from Margaret Kipe. As surely as we belong to the universe, we belong together. We join here to transcend the isolated self, to reconnect, to know ourselves to be at home here on Earth, under the stars, linked with each other. Now let us affirm together the aspiration from Spirit of Truth. I invite you to sing along with Kim and Georgiana.
Spirit of truth, that dwellest in the mountain, descend, we pray thee, to the marts of earth. Give us to hear the rustle of thy garment. Grant us to feel thy shadow near. So may we find the strength to stand face forward, courage to walk toward the dawning day.
The mission of Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation is the covenant of this congregation. Would all the members and visitors who would like to affirm it along with me? We covenant to nurture each other in our spiritual journeys, foster compassion and understanding within and beyond our community, and engage in service to transform ourselves and our world. The CUUC's choir performance of Gaudeamus Hodie will be premiered in another few weeks. Meanwhile, this is another work by Johann Sebastian Bach, Beloved Jesu, we are here.
I'm Cornelia Spring, Vice President of the Westchester Community College Foundation and Chair of the Scholarship Committee. I am here today to thank you for your most generous and continuing support of our students. WCC Foundation's Student Emergency Fund provides funds to support rent, utilities, emergency medical needs, and assist students in many other ways. Food insecurity remains at an all-time high. We continue to provide funds to students in need via PayPal for assistance with food and transportation, as well with information on food pantries, soup kitchens, mobile food banks throughout the county, assistance with SNAP, WIC applications, and referrals. We provide over 250 students and their families with a Thanksgiving dinner package. Information and outreach regarding new state-generated SNAP requirements are shared also with students to maximize eligibility. Student need continues to grow. We have received over 500 applications for emergency assistance due to COVID and have been able to provide many of these students with support. Their words say it best. Jennifer G. writes, I want to show my gratitude for being granted $2,000 towards my rent. It is amazing that you guys are doing this. It has been so hard for a lot of people during this pandemic. I've thought about leaving school so that I can look for a job with more hours. Before the pandemic, I was working as a nanny and was making enough to maintain my son and I. I was able to attend college full-time, and then my hours were cut short, almost pushing me to leave school. But now with this help I've received, I'm able to stay in school. I cannot thank you enough for helping me through all of this. Philip writes, thank you for assisting me with a $2,000 grant to pay my rent. If it wasn't for the grant, I would not be able to focus on my schoolwork and have a place to log into Zoom for my classes. When I received your letter, I cried. I pray this foundation helps others in need and that no student must go through what I went through. I appreciate WCC Foundation deeply. Thank you. Tamara writes, I'm honored to be the recipient of the emergency aid grant that will help me pay for my medical bills. Thanks to your generous support, I was able to continue my education debt-free. As I'm the first in my family to attend college, this award is extremely important to me. I will do my best to make both you and my family proud of me. I consider myself fortunate to be given the opportunity to study at an institution like Westchester Community College, an institution where everyone is devoted to accommodating students and encouraging them to believe that their dreams can become reality. Your continuing support is truly making an impact on our students, enabling them to stay on the road to financial independence through education, thus changing their lives, their families, and their communities. You are helping us to change the world one person at a time through the power of education. Thank you for your support.
This morning, we're sharing the story of the dragonfly. This story resonates with me on Easter especially, as dragonflies are a symbol of transformation and new life. They remind us that as we are transformed, we live more fully into our lives, and there's the potential for such beauty in transformation. Imagine if the water bugs have no idea there's another life waiting for them, a life in which they will expand wings they might not even know they have and breathe air they might not even know exists. In our lives, what are the wings we do not yet know we have? What is the air we do not yet know we can breathe? Imagine what it might be like to trust what lies within us and beyond us that we cannot yet even dream of. The story of the dragonfly is an old fable retold by many. This version is from Doris Stickney. Down below the surface of a quiet pond lived a little colony of water bugs. They were a happy colony, living far away from the sun. For many months, they were very busy scurrying over the soft mud on the bottom of the pond. They did notice that every once in a while, one of their colonies seemed to lose interest in going about with its friends, clinging to the stem of a pond lily. It gradually moved out of sight and was seen no more. "Look," said one of the water bugs to another, "one of our colony is climbing up the lily stalk. Where do you suppose she's going?" Up, 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 she went slowly. Even as they watched, the water bug disappeared from sight. Her friends waited and waited, but she did not return. "That's funny," said one water bug to another. "Wasn't she happy here?" asked a second water bug. "Where do you suppose she went?" wondered a third. No one had an answer. They were greatly puzzled. Finally, one of the water bugs, a leader in the colony, gathered her friends together. "I have an idea. The next one of us who climbs up the lily stalk must promise to come back and tell us where you went and why." "We promise," they said solemnly. One spring day, not long after, the very water bug who had suggested the plan found herself climbing up the lily stalk. Up, up, up she went. Before she knew what was happening, she had broken through the surface of the water and fallen onto the broad green lily pad above. Weary from her journey, she slept. When she awoke, she looked about with surprise. She couldn't believe what she saw. A startling change had come to her old body. Her movement revealed 4 silver wings and a long tail. Even as she struggled, she felt an impulse to move her wings. The warmth of the sun soon dried the moisture from this new body. She moved her wings again and suddenly found herself up above the water. She had become a dragonfly. Swooping and dipping in the great curves, she flew through the air. She felt exhilarated in the new atmosphere. By and by, the dragonfly lighted happily on the lily pad to rest. Then it was that she chanced to look below to the bottom of the pond. Why, she was right above her old friends, the water bugs. There they were, scurrying about just as she had been doing some time before. The dragonfly remembered the promise. "The next one of us who climbs up the lily stalk will come back and tell where you went and why." Without thinking, the dragonfly darted down. Suddenly, she hit the surface of the water and bounced away. Now that she was a dragonfly, she could no longer go into the water. "I can't return," she said in dismay. "I tried, but I can't keep my promise. Even if I could go back now, not one of the water bugs would know me in my new body. I guess I'll just have to wait until they become dragonflies too. Then they'll understand what happened to me, where I went, and this wonderful new life I've been given." And the dragonfly winged off happily into her wonderful new world of sun and air.
Will you pray with me? Dear Spirit of life and truth, we remember in our hearts today the life of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., assassinated 53 years ago today. May we renew our commitment to carry on his legacy, carry on the work for justice. Since last Easter, many of us have had to bury loved ones, often from a distance, often unable to be with them as they died. The pandemic continues to ravage families and communities across the globe. In Brazil, where 3,000 deaths a day from COVID-19 continue to mount. In India, where vaccines produced for overseas are being retained for use at home and in the US, where infection rates rise again. In Europe, rates are spiking again, leading to lockdown. In Tanzania, where the pandemic-denying regime of former President John Magufuli, who died last week, has been replaced by a new government under Samia Suluhu Hassan, the first female president, and where hospitals are overrun with COVID-19 patients. The pattern repeats across the globe, despite the progress of vaccination programs in some, mostly Western countries. There are many nearer at home who need comfort or a listening ear. May we find ways to offer ourselves in such ways as we can to meet others' needs. May our emptiness be filled with love. May we discover anew in each day that love is the greatest energy in our lives and in our world. We give thanks for the love, faith, and compassion of so many who have gone out of their way to do acts of kindness for others, often unknown to them. May we dare to trust and live in tune with our ideal of beloved community. And for all that has been spoken aloud, and for all that we are carrying silently in our hearts, we will observe now a moment of silence.
Calling on you, hungry hearts, everywhere through endless time. You who wander, you who thirst, I offer you this heart of mine. Calling on you, hungry spirits, all the lost and the left behind. All I can, I'll share with you, your joy and your sorrow, I make it mine. Set me as a seal upon your heart, as a seal upon your heart. For love is strong as death. For
mindful. I know mindfulness has been kind of a trendy thing on the spiritual scene, and maybe as a trend it has played itself out, but as a good idea, it is thousands of years old and won't stop being a good idea. Mindfulness simply means paying attention in a particular way, on purpose, in the present moment, non-judgmentally. And simply telling yourself a few times during your day, be mindful, is wonderful practice. When we are in touch with what is right here, right now, says Thich Nhat Hanh, our understanding of what is going on deepens, and we begin to be filled with acceptance, joy, peace, and love. Be mindful. Rick Hansen explains that attention is like a combination spotlight and vacuum cleaner. It illuminates what it rests upon and then sucks it into your brain. Since attention is largely under volitional control, you have an extraordinary tool at your disposal all day long to gradually sculpt your brain in positive ways. Happily, attention is very trainable. You really can develop better control of your spotlight/vacuum cleaner as you practice being mindful, which simply means being steadily aware of something. You will gain more control over your attention. As your mindful awareness increases, negative experiences have less impact on you. For the rest of the post listing benefits of mindfulness and tips for doing it, see Be Mindful at cucmatters.org. The link is in your eCommunitarian. I invite you now to sing along with ourselves the Easter hymn at CUUC a couple years ago. It's number 61, Lo, the Earth Awakes Again. I'll share with you a Zen koan and talk about ordinariness as salvific. The reliable quotidian rhythms can save us if we let them. And then we'll look at the larger scale hopes for social and political liberation in the foreground of the Passover story and in the background of the Easter story. And we'll note how the four gospel accounts of Easter are different. And then after the break, we'll take a deep dive into the Gospel of Mark and see if we can emerge with a context for both the ordinary, everyday resurrection and a social liberation that we have not yet seen. I'll end with a question rather than an affirmation, so I won't be saying amen at the end. That'll be up to you. Here we go. A friend of mine is a United Church of Christ minister. We met at the Zen Center where we both practice. Every couple of weeks, we meet on Zoom to study a koan together. And from there, we often talk shop about how things are at our respective congregations. We are working our way through a collection of koans called the Mumenkan, or Gateless Gate. And when we Zoomed last Thursday, the one we were on was number 19. Here's how it goes. Zhao Zhu earnestly asked Nanquan, "What is the way?" Nanquan said, "The ordinary mind is the way." Zhao Zhu said, "Should I direct myself toward it or not?" And Nanquan said, "If you try to turn toward it, you go against it." Zhao Zhu said, "If I do not try to turn toward it, how can I know that it's the way?" And Nanquan said, "The way does not belong to knowing or not knowing. Knowing is delusion. Not knowing is a blank consciousness. When you have reached the true way beyond all doubt, you will find it is as vast and boundless as the great empty firmament. How can it be talked about on a level of right and wrong?" At these words, Zhao Zhu was suddenly enlightened. Ordinary mind is the way. There's no special state to be achieved. The way does call for being mindful, and this mindfulness is simply paying attention to your ordinary life with its ordinary events. There's no particular turning toward it that is called for. Anything special would be turning away from it. You don't have to learn some special knowledge. Knowing is delusion. But don't glorify ignorance either. Not knowing is blank consciousness. The way is nothing special. As my friend and I were talking about ordinariness, we got to talking about what we were going to say to our congregations for Easter. I shared with him that I found this koan helpful. This is my 8th Easter service with Community Unitarian Universalist Congregation at White Plains. All the splashy interpretations that I might have to offer have been shared in Easter's past. It's getting kind of ordinary. And ordinary is the way. The ordinary and reliable rebirth of spring, the ordinary and reliable lightening of our hearts as the days grow longer and the air warms and the lovely blossoms push up from the earth. He shared with me that he wished he could convince his congregation that the resurrection was nothing special. I've been reflecting about that. He's a Christian, and I'm a non-Christian Unitarian, and we're both also Buddhists. Whether you're a Christian or not, you may be thinking there's something special about the resurrection of Jesus, something extraordinary. You might think it's extraordinary and true and is a truth that gives life much of its meaning, or you might think it's extraordinary and false, too extraordinary to be credible. But what if it's neither of those? What if it's not extraordinary? What if it's nothing special? Before you die, your life has what meaning it has in and through the hearts and minds of the people who know you. After you die, your life continues, meaning what it means in and through the hearts and minds of the people who know you. And apart from that, there's the reliable rhythm of the returning beauty of spring. So glorious, so gloriously ordinary. It is a rhythm recapitulated in the ups and downs of life, the cycle of defeats and triumphs we encounter, of wounding and healing. We resurrect out of silence and into our voice, and we find we still have episodes of being silenced. We resurrect out of fear and into assured confidence, and then we find we still have episodes of being scared sometimes. Nothing special. I am not being the Schmeester bunny here. You know the Schmeester bunny, the dismissive little rabbit that is through with carrying eggs all over the place, done with those pretty brightly colored symbols of fertility, fed up with chocolate representations of itself. Easter Schmeester, says the Schmeester bunny. Don't be a Schmeester bunny. The cycles of rebirth are wonderful, beautiful, delightful, and ordinary. These ordinary and reliable rhythms of life and death and rebirth are indeed glorious and rich and nothing to be dismissive of. And along with these ordinary rhythms, we also have this background of hope, of yearning, of the prospect and maybe even the possibility of large-scale liberation. There's Passover, the 8 days of which conclude at sundown this evening, and the Passover story telling us of the Hebrew people fleeing from slavery in Egypt. The Israelites were subsequently conquered by the Assyrians, though they pretty much thrived as semi-independent Assyrian vassal. And when the Assyrian Empire collapsed, the area was conquered by the Babylonians, and then the Persians, and then the Greeks under Alexander the Great, and then the Romans. The Romans had been the occupying force for a little over 100 years by the time of Jesus. And once again, or more or less still, the Jewish people were longing for liberation from their occupying oppressors. The original hope of the Jesus movement was a political hope that he would be the leader, the king of an independent Israel, like David and Solomon of old. They called him the Christ, a Latin term calqued from the Hebrew Messiah, which meant anointed one. The reference is to ceremonially anointing with oil at the inauguration of a monarch. That's the common thread that links Passover and Easter, a people longing for freedom from oppressive rulers, the Egyptians in one case, the Romans in the other. The hopes of the people are pinned in the one story on Moses and on the other story on Jesus. One story has a happy ending. They escape Egyptian oppression. The other story has, well, a different sort of happy ending. The people don't get the political freedom that they wanted. The hero is executed. Instead, the story offers what might be called a spiritual bypass. The message is that a spiritual freedom is offered us, though the oppression of the body continues. I want to remember with you that the 4 canonical Gospels differ on what happened Easter morning. Mary Magdalene went by herself to the tomb, or she went with another Mary, or there were 3 women, or at least 4. She or they were taking spices to prepare the body for burial. She came in the pre-dawn darkness, or they came when the day was dawning, or the sun had already risen. They arrived just in time to see an angel roll the stone back, or found the stone already rolled back. In Matthew, the 2 women saw an angel and some guards. Mark says the 3 women entered the tomb and saw 1 young man dressed in a white robe. Luke says the group of 4 or more women saw 2 men in dazzling robes. And in John, Mary Magdalene went alone, saw no one. She then left, found 2 of the male disciples, told them the body was missing, rushed back to the tomb with the men. They saw nothing but linen wrappings. The men left Mary alone, crying, and only then did she look into the tomb and see 2 angels in white. Each of the 4 different stories offers us an allegory with resources for meaning making. And for this year, I want to look particularly at the account in Mark, and we'll plunge into that after we get back. But now, Adam?
Thank you, Reverend Meredith. Much of the solo piano music I've been playing for Easter has centered Jesus. This next work, though, provides a more abstract take on Easter in Haydn's Keyboard Sonata in D major, where the grief and darkness of the slow movement give way to unexpected joy and regeneration in the last movement.
Mark is the earliest gospel, written around 70 CE, say most scholars. It's also the shortest gospel. At under 15,000 words, it's less than 2/3 the length of the average of the other three gospels. And there's no miraculous birth in Mark. In fact, no birth story at all, no Christmas story, no doctrine of divine preexistence, and the Easter story, as we'll see, is truncated. It begins with Jesus' baptism by John the Baptist, and it ends like this, the final verses from the Gospel of Mark. When the Sabbath was over, Mary Magdalene and Mary, the mother of James, and Salome brought spices so that they might go and anoint him. And very early on the first day of the week, when the sun had risen, they went to the tomb. They had been saying to one another, "Who will roll away the stone for us from the entrance to the tomb?" When they looked up, they saw that the stone, which was very large, had already been rolled back. As they entered the tomb, they saw a young man dressed in a white robe, sitting on the right side, and they were alarmed. But he said to them, "Do not be alarmed. You are looking for Jesus of Nazareth, who was crucified. He has been raised. He is not here. Look, there is the place they laid for him. But go, tell his disciples and Peter that he is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him, just as he told you." So they went out and fled from the tomb, for terror and amazement had seized them. And they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. The end. They were afraid. That's it. That's the end of the whole Gospel of Mark. At least, let us say, it's the end of the earliest and most reliable manuscripts of Mark. They end at that point, women fleeing in fear from the empty tomb. Most scholars today believe this is, in fact, the original ending of Mark's Gospels. Statements from the early church fathers, Eusebius and Jerome, support that this is the original ending. Evidently, this didn't feel like a satisfactory conclusion, so later manuscripts add a little more, but the original ended right there. They said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid. Silence and fear. That's what we're left with. That's our Easter story. Silence and fear. Where is the gospel? The good news in that? One scholar, Richard Burridge, argues that Mark's picture of discipleship involves not knowing whether things will come right in the end. The way Mark's gospel ends certainly leaves open the question of whether it all comes right in the end. Burridge compares the ending of Mark to its beginning. He writes, "Mark's narrative, as we have it now, ends as abruptly as it began. There was no introduction or background to Jesus' arrival and none for his departure. No one knew where he came from, no one knows where he has gone, and not many understood him when he was here." Mark leaves us with silence and fear. And yet the very fact that he's telling the story tells us that it didn't end there. Someone broke that silence, the story says, or there wouldn't be the story. I've spoken before of the women who courageously broke silence, first to lament, and in lamenting reclaim dignity and worthiness in the face of loss, and further to remember, to say a name against all the shaming, fear, and humiliation that would bury it in silence. They broke silence to say his name, as we are today enjoined to say the names: George Floyd, Walter Scott, Breonna Taylor, Philando Castile, Erica Garner, and all the others. There is a power to breaking silence, to saying their names. Further, they broke silence to tell stories that represented that the hope found in this man lived on. Stories to transcend fear and affirm community. Stories to overcome violence by sustaining hope. Stories to transform humiliation into the strength of connection, and in so doing, resurrect life from death. Mark leaves us with silence and fear, yet he also leaves us knowing that the silence will be broken, that the fear will be overcome, for the fact that he's telling the story tells us that the story and the hope does live on. And what is that hope? The three women encounter a young man dressed in a white robe who tells them Jesus has been raised and that Jesus is going ahead of you to Galilee. There you will see him. Galilee, Jesus' birthplace, the place on the margins of Israel where Jesus began his ministry, the place where the first 9 chapters of Mark's gospel take place. In other words, to find your hope, go back to the beginning and go back out to the margins. In Jerusalem, if Jerusalem, the capital, the urban center of ancient Near East society, represents the center of what society deems important, then our renewal lies in going to the margins. Mark's gospel ends so abruptly. You are left to write the end of the story. Even ancient sources couldn't resist writing an ending, but never mind their ending, patched in from snippets of Matthew and Luke. What's your ending? From the fear that has silenced you, what is your path back to the beginning? Back out to the margins of what society centers? What will we do with our fear? Go back to Galilee, your origin on the margins. There you will see Jesus, see your own Christ nature, your Buddha nature, the Moses of your heart. There you will meet the others with whom you may join in the ongoing work of resurrection, the ongoing task to bring forth new life. I believe that you know what I'm talking about, and you know it from experience. I'm not saying do this thing that's nothing like anything you've ever done before. I think you have had moments in your life where you did this, broke from what was silencing you, answered your fear, returned to your Galilee, and touched what we Unitarians call your inherent worth and dignity. You have taken action with others to rebuild your life, to build the life we share together after a loss or setback. You are not, I think, a complete stranger to the work of resurrection. You got this. The invitation that is always open, and that Easter is an occasion for remembering, is to ask, in what ways now and again are you called back to where you came from, to see now and again your true self, and in what ways now and again to take up the work of resurrection? There may be personal resurrections for you from loss and grief, and there is also the social and political rebuilding to be done. The collective liberation that's at the heart of the Passover story and was the original hope of the Jesus movement. The testimony of the George Floyd trial this week has made many of us acutely conscious of the fact that we've created a police force so insulated from accountability that they can commit murder at will. It's reminded us of the many ways our society oppresses people of color and thereby oppresses all of us. Whatever our race, we're all precluded from the beloved community for which our hearts yearn. Building beloved community will require going to the margins, going out to the places where people are marginalized, going back to our origins, the values of fair treatment, of radical hospitality, of loving all our neighbors as ourselves, the values we embody when we see our own Christ nature, the love from which we came before our silence and our fear made us complacent with white supremacist assumptions, complacent in the emergence of today's police departments. Mark's gospel leaves you with silence and fear, leaving you to write the end of the story. What's the continuation to the Gospel of Mark that you will write today? What's the continuation that you will write today?
Please sing along with our own pre-pandemic congregation, hymn number 1064, Blue Boat Home.
Standing on these mountains and plains, far away from the rolling ocean, till I drive and I can say, I've been sailing all my life now, never harbor a port I know, the wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue home. Sun by sail and moon by rudder, as I glide the starry sea, leaning over the edge in wonder, casting questions into the deep, drifting here in my ship's companions, are we hindered pilgrim souls, making our way by the lights of the heavens, in our beautiful blue boat home. I give thanks to the waves upholding me, ever great with urging me on. Brave the infinite sea before me, sing the sky my sailor song. I was born upon the fathoms, never harbor or port I know. The wide universe is the ocean I travel, and the earth is my blue boat home.
Website. Be safe, be well. And now please join Joe Majak for our chalice extinguishing words as you extinguish your chalice at home.
Please say with me these words as we extinguish our chalices. The light of our time together we now extinguish. We go now from this place of renewal to carry forward our commitment to justice, equity, and compassion.
Words of benediction from Frederick Gillis.
May the love which overcomes all differences,
which heals all wounds,
which puts to flight all fears,
which reconciles all who are separated,
be in us and among us.
now and always. Go in peace.
go in love.
Go in hope.
If you've got troubles, then I've got 'em too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. If we stick together, we can see it through. 'Cause you've got a friend in me. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Now some of you folks might be a little bit smarter than I am. Maybe, but none of them will ever love you the way I do. Just me and you, boy. And as the years go by, our friendship will never die. You're gonna see it's our destiny. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me.
Non est hic surrexit. He isn't here. He is risen. Go forth and announce that he is risen from the tomb. Here is Bach's Jesu, joy of our desiring.